where are some of the immediate care areas that you are thinking from AI in the loop perspective for customer care? What are some of the applications that you've seen? What are you trying to change? What is your vision as IGTX together to help customers, help your customers deliver their customers in terms of their overall experience?
At the core of it, right? If you're thinking you're in the customer experience business, what you're trying to do is learn, right? You're trying to learn the culture. You're trying to learn kind of the policies of the client. You're trying to imbibe kind of what they stand for, and there is a standard operating procedure. It's actually a learning of the entire customer experience is actually a learning organization.
Now take what generative AI and AI can do. First of all, we can monitor 100% of calls, right? We can be looking not just for keyword search, we can be looking for sentiment analysis. We can, to the quality team, serve up the 1 minute of the call that was unsatisfactory. So now we can audit 100% at the same cost base for our customers.
Hello and welcome everyone to the next episode of the AIM Media House podcast, Simulated Reality. Today we have with us two industry stalwarts, the CEO of IGT Solutions, Stein, and managing partner and co-founder of AuxoAI, Amaresh Tripathy. Katie and Amaresh, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you guys doing?
It's exciting.
Thank you so much, Kashyap. Always looking forward to the conversation with you.
Yes, this is going to be a fun conversation. We have talked about this for a while. We have exchanged some articles around this topic, and we already have opinions on it. And funnily enough, today morning, I was discussing a topic on bias and responsible AI. And they were, the person, the leader, specific leader was continuously talking about human in the loop. But both of you have been very vocal about AI in the loop, right? Before we start off this topic of conversation, Katie, I want to ask you, why did you want to speak this, and where did this term AI in the loop catch your attention, or did you come up with it? And why did we decide to specifically discuss this? Let's start with the basics.
So I think you know that I changed roles in April, and I went from sitting in a big organization in a number of strategy conversations where we looked at the hype of generative AI and we said, what are the areas we should attack? Oh, let's attack contact center. We're not that big. We could come in with a generative AI solution and disrupt it. And I think there are other large brands in the market, take Klarna, that talk this way, right? And we've all read a lot of what they're trying to launch. And then I took over IGT Solutions, where what we focus on is customer experience. And we serve some of the largest brands in the industry where, candidly, they don't even have product. What they sell is experience. And it shifted my mental position 180 degrees. And I understood the impact of human touch when a customer is experiencing their worst moment and the humanized value that's delivered. And I understood while there are many things on the front line, the first line, that can be automated, transactional tasks, that this hype around eliminating customer experience actually is upside down. And so Amaresh and I spent some time together and we were talking about, and it's not one or the other, but human in the loop is very much a technical term for how humans are training AI. But it's led to a number of fallacies around the elimination of the human's role. And over time, we've seen that. We've seen automation reduce the need for certain humans and tasks. And I actually think we can change it to AI in the loop, where AI elevates expertise, especially that human intuition component of expertise, that empathy element, and creates more value. And so we're taking a very strong and optimistic position on this, which is it's about AI in the loop to unlock human potential.
So essentially, human in the loop as a concept or terminology was there should be some level of intervention by humans between AI. But AI in the loop is an understanding where you are mentioning that you don't take away the human out of the equation. Why these terms, while we are phrasing it out differently, these terminologies seem a little similar? Amaresh, can you help us dissect it a little?
It's about what is primary and what's secondary, right? I mean, even in an augmented way, right? We talk about amplifying human potential, right? Like we go and talk about responsible AI, right? I mean, so we talk about these terms, but the idea is who's the primary driver behind it, and I think AI in the loop. It's a commitment to humans that AI is actually in the loop. It's not like, oh, AI is primary. If you lose human in the loop, it almost feels like AI is the primary and human is secondary. I mean, that's kind of the connotation around it. And part of it is, I think, Kashyap, you and I have talked about it, the importance of narrative, right? These large organizations, and there's a lot of people who are very nervous about AI. I mean, even there are, like, both Katie and I are optimists about it, but that doesn't take away the fact that there is a lot of nervousness about adoption of AI in many places. So, and if you have the right narrative, and words matter when you use that. So when you talk about AI in the loop, it's like, okay, human is the primary, AI is in the loop. That's why, even though it might seem similar, there are nuances that matter in terms of narrative, and it also amplifies what exactly is the perspective. In Katie's case, in IGT's case, it's about how do you make humans expert experience providers. That's basically what they want to kind of do, and they want to keep human in the loop, and that's why I think it matters which way you frame it.
Amaresh, you've known me for a while, right? I was a data scientist. I turned journalist. I've never been in a leadership position in a large organization, right? I understand what is changing, why changing this makes sense in terms of changing the narrative. I will never understand or be able to comprehend what does that actually translate to, right? I want to bring in both of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a cognizant effort by IGTX, right? There is a, just for our audience who don't know, IGT and AuxoAI have recently partnered together, and they're calling the initiative IGTX, which we will talk about in a little bit more detail as well. But I want to kind of understand this change of narrative, this change of words. What does that translate to in day-to-day words? And I would like to talk it from all the stakeholders: IGT, AuxoAI, IGTX, your customers, users. If you can touch upon all these stakeholders, what does that exactly mean?
Yeah. So let me take this, and let's actually just go to metrics, right? So the first thing that happened in the contact center industry is we started to look at call deflection, right? Which is purely driving cost reduction. Call deflection is all about what can we actually automate. So I, as a consumer, can get my answer, whether I like doing it that way or not, because my answer is a password reset. My answer is something very simple, okay? That was automation, in the era of automation, and it eliminated the need for a certain volume of calls to go to the contact center. Then we started talking about AI and autonomous agents, chatbots on steroids. And we started talking about how can we train these virtual agents to get better and better and better, and how can we put the guardrails in around them. The fact is, at this moment, most consumers, if you listen to Gartner's most recent study, 70% or so are saying, we actually don't want to talk autonomously to an agent. So you have to ask yourself why. Because we're getting to the stage in most of these transactions where the reason I'm calling is not a simple query, and the technology is not equipped to understand my context and my sentiment. So let me give you a very simple example of where human expertise and empathy comes in. A couple of years ago, at the height of Game of Thrones, we had one of the actors of Game of Thrones. I can see you smiling. You must be a Game of Thrones, a Valerian.
I love the TV show. Yeah.
Yeah.
The first 5 seasons.
Sorry, went on social media. He was filming somewhere in the Northeast, and his wife was in London. He's one of the top actors. I won't say which one. And he tweeted out, I just wish X brand could get me home to meet my new baby. He had a baby the day before. Okay. Now, a bot, an automated, I mean, it wouldn't have understood the context of that this is someone, the agent at first didn't know this was someone famous, but this is someone, and this is the context. And most of us as humans understand, and I don't know how we would train technology to understand this, what that was saying, right? It wasn't just a post. So that agent started to investigate and saw the Game of Thrones insignia and researched and realized, and is a huge Game of Thrones fan, it turns out. And so started chatting with this person in Valerian. So he started chatting, and it became this banter of this person in this moment of crisis where they were stuck because of filming and their wife was at home with a new baby a continent away. And he said, look, can you get me out on a flight? And they were all booked. And this person was able to step to the exception above policy to figure out how they could get them on a flight. It gets worse, right? The exception continues. The filming continued. He wasn't going to make that flight. He called back in. Anyway, the agent does their magic again. They get them on a flight the next morning. But this is where true context and humanized behavior comes in, which I'm not sure how a generative AI in the next iteration will understand. When that individual landed in their connection in New York on their way to London, the agent had worked with our brand, the customer, to have him met with a delight package, which was flowers for his wife and a baby gift for the baby. Now, IGT Solutions is not pictured in this at all, but our customer's brand delivered the penultimate delight. He went on social media as a huge fan follower the next day and tweeted out, X brand is the best. That advocacy is what brands like this strive for. And that isn't something that technology or automation could have delivered at this stage of its advancement. And so I still come back to, if advocacy, loyalty, which ultimately are drivers of revenue growth, are the penultimate metric, and if care isn't about executing a task to a policy, but thinking beyond that, creatively thinking with empathy, thinking about how to serve a customer, then I think that it's about AI enabling that, giving choices, calculating benefits and risks, bringing up policies. But the human has to, at the end of the day, be the person who takes the conscious call because they understand the context in a humanized way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Amaresh, I want to ask you the same question. What does this translate to? I think a beautiful
I thought you were
example.
going to ask me if he's a Game of Thrones fan.
I want to know who the actor was and which company is, but probably we will we will discuss that after the call.
But I think if you step back, this broad notion, I have a similar story around that, which is it's a very, one of my friends. She's Harvard undergrad, and she was kind of doing a bunch of other things, but she was a manager for one of the very high-end New York restaurants. And one of the things they used to do, and this is like 10 years ago, where they would used to, like, whoever has the reservation, they would go and see the Twitter feeds of what these guys have posted, right? And there's this like a way, and then normally it's like most of the people tweet of these. I mean, they're like very celebrity folks who are kind of coming there. And one of the person tweeted that day, it was like a French restaurant, I think. It was like, oh, I'm coming from a long flight. What I really wish is I need a hamburger. That's basically what they say. It's a French restaurant. And but the thing is, these guys they were all monitoring it and they were figuring it out. So the technology had a role. So the fact that there was a process around it, they were looking at kind of what their preferences are and everything. And she got this. And then guess what? They went and in a French restaurant delivered a hamburger for him. And it was not like he was just kind of just lamenting about it that he wanted to have a hamburger. And this is a similar story to Katie. I think the broader point is, most people do not want to do L1 activities, like whatever, like or even L2 activities many times, right? Most people want to be served and delighted every time, not kind of done the basic stuff. And the idea is these technologies are fantastic. Like whether it's with automation, with AI, with generative AI, you can do more and more of these basic stuff. You can get done with it, and you can see a lot of like case studies around it. But that actually empowers people to do more differentiated stuff, create more differentiated experience, which is good for you and I as a consumer. It's good for the companies and the brands, and it's good for service providers.
Yeah, I also think the other, sorry to jump in on top of Amaresh. So there's elimination of work that frees up capacity for human focus and execution. The second thing really is, when you think about it, we see, we service at IGT Solutions, we have 25,000 agents around the world. And we talk a lot internally around how can you train for empathy? And it's really hard. First of all, you screen for some of these attributes in people. But then the way that historically training has worked is that people sit in a classroom, young agents, and they watch a few role plays. And then we, historically as an industry, have put them on the phone, and they're now interacting with human to human in a context that never mirrors what happened in the classroom. Right? Mm-hmm. And so when you think about it, the way that we can use AI and generative AI, first, we can create endless simulations. We can combine simulations. And where do people learn empathy? They learn through experience, right? They learn because they've seen a pattern and they know now, okay, I had a friend who was sick. I'm meeting someone who's sick. I know what to say and what not to say. So the more we can individualize curriculums and give them that breadth of exposure, we're in a hyper, condensed period of time, they can learn years of effectively experience. We position them to be more confident in their judgment, in their ability to interpret the context and actually deliver a solution that's not to the T of a policy. Because if it's just reading a script, it can be automated. And this is where I really believe that customer experience, which has been a cost center historically, is becoming a brand and advocacy center. And maybe even ultimately in some companies, a revenue generating or profit center. But on that continuum, those that remain just cost centers and focus only on productivity and on automation, I think have a very limited scope and work for companies that aren't seeing that the world is about experience, and brands that are moving to experience win with 80%. Those that are loyal come back to them. The moment that experience breaks, they leave. And so I think that's where this whole fine line becomes extremely important for companies that will win in the future.
I think the underlying theme that we're discussing before even we reach AI or generative AI or chatbots on steroids is empathy, right? That's the key this thing that we're talking about. Automation. So before we go to AI, right?
It's not only empathy. It's empathy. It's apprenticeship. It's learning by doing. Right? It's all of it. Like, I mean, you said you were a data scientist. How did you learn being a data scientist? Not only by reading 3 books. The first 3 projects probably taught you 90% of what you needed to be to become a data scientist.
Yeah. So, but my point is more from the perspective of understanding what are the elements of human behavior that we're trying to copy into an AI, right? And empathy or some of these apprenticeship or other values which are there. We are trying to kind of ensure.
I think, sorry, before empathy, like one of the most important things for us in the customer experience realm is to understand empathy is one aspect, could be. What is the culture of the brand, right? Mm-hmm. What are they trying to be? Some brands are trying to be, let's not kid ourselves, where low-cost providers have gone awry is where a low-cost, let's say, retail market tries to suddenly pretend that they're a white glove service, organization. And the fact is actually they're ruthlessly driving pennies, cents on the dollar, and trying to provide the customer. The reason the customer comes is the lowest cost, right? At the other end of the spectrum, you have customers who are willing to pay for a ticket where they know their plane's going to take off, they're going to get home for that funeral. It's important to them, right? Or as a luxury brand, so I think what we're trying to say is that on that spectrum, first, you have to understand what is the culture, what is it that makes that business strategy work, and then what's the operating model. And in operating models that are just about cost and productivity, we need to ruthlessly drive as much as we can, whether the end consumer likes it or not, through digital channels, eliminate waste and cost. And we don't really care whether the consumer is super happy because they'll come back because it's the cheapest place to get macaroni and cheese. And that's important to them in a place where grocery bills kept rising. We heard that last night.
Yeah.
For a number of brands who I think have winning strategies, it's about loyalty. It's about experience. It's about empathy. It's about courtesy. It's about what they define their culture as. And the idea of technology being able to mimic that is where we're still short on the technology spectrum. And that's where technology plus human can deliver at speed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's very evident that you are, you have been, both of you have been industry leaders for a while. I want to take a step back and more than, I do want to talk about, company values, how a company is perceived, some of the applications that are it. How do you want to kind of build your AI around it? I want to go to a more fundamental question with you, right? And then we can talk about a little bit more around brands, right? Here we're talking about empathy or some of the other values that we are trying to cope through AI. Now, one of my things is, and I was talking about this before as well to another leader, is that see, it's very antithetical for us to not use AI to automate everything because AI's job was to automate everything, right? But at the same time, we have realized that there are risks for it. Apart from risks, there are some other notions that we need to, or other parameters that need to be really considered around this, right? So my question to you both is, are you saying that AI should never take up some of the jobs? Before whether AI can be empathetic or not is a whole different question. My question is more from a very jobs or this perspective,
Yeah.
right? Are you saying that AI should never take some jobs or never take some things away from humans wherever it is applied?
So I have a very strong view on this, which is the way to look at it through the spectrum, right? Is take a very simple chart and say a customer's willingness to pay and a prospective employee's willingness to work. Where the customer is not willing to pay and the employee doesn't want to do the job and therefore demands that they get paid versus another job, the margin, which is effective to the value being created, is very, very little. You need to look at all of those spaces and ask yourself, as a services partner, why can't we automate this? If the customer doesn't want to pay for it, there's no value in it for them, really. It's a task. All they want is lower cost. And employees see no value to them. Therefore, it's harder to source them. It's more expensive for you. The thinning out there, classic. You should automate that as much as you can. Those are the L1 tasks that Amaresh was talking about. Where a customer is willing to pay, because it's adding value, it's creating enterprise value for them, it's creating loyalty, which is lifetime value, right? Because they're willing to pay more, we should be willing to pay for expertise. We don't need to automate all that. We should pay for what is creating that value. Now, behind the scenes on back office tasks, post-call interaction, documentation, those things, we should always look for efficiency. Because again, back to Amaresh's point, that's how you clear the mindset so that someone isn't doing a bunch of other tasks that distract them. It's the same thing in sales, Keshav, where in sales for a long time, remember, the whole metric was salespeople spend 70% of their time doing administrative things. Why would we ever do that? Period. If a salesperson best use is being with the customer, on a plane to the customer, sitting with them, building a relationship, building trust, why do we have them filling out all these forms and all these documents? That can be automated, but you wouldn't use generative AI and replace the salesperson with a generative AI bot if you really think the customer's willingness to buy is higher because of the relationship. And I do believe strongly that when we talk about deals like we do, they're not automated. I mean, customers aren't buying based on, give me this rate card. Maybe procurement is looking at that, but customers are based on looking someone in the eye and saying, do I trust that in tough times, because they'll come, you and your team will deliver? And so that's why we need that person up front, and we will not automate them. So I think you have to go through sort of that 2x2 and figure it out. It's neither an all or nothing scenario. I think too much of the industry conversation has been this hype, especially driven by Klarna, which has been everything can be automated. AI will replace everything. And I think that actually that is the piece that I'm attacking and saying, I disagree.
Yeah. And Kashyap, I think you asked the question, should it displace jobs or not? I think the right way to frame it is, it's not about job displacement. The job displacement is a function of changing of the jobs. I think jobs what you do in the job will change. And by the way, that has changed with every technology before internet, like the name of technology before calculators and everything. So it changes what you do in the job, and you start doing more advanced things. And that's what's going to happen. So, but will it kind of create reshuffle of things? Of course, it will create some reshuffle of things.
See, one of this, I want to slightly different, drifting apart from the topic, right? Because Amaresh, you made this point that automation has always created newer jobs, right? The counter argument to that is, until now, automation was not intelligent, right? Whenever, let's say, we decided to create a robot to manufacture, let's say, glass bottles, this thing, probably a person who was working to create that glass bottle now started using a software to plan this thing, right? Jobs displaced, but in more intelligent jobs came. But when automation itself becomes intelligent, does that present a threat in terms of the job displacement with regards to the scale of which it can do that?
So my thing is, the definition of intelligence is something that I don't think everyone is kind of just struggling with, and what actually is intelligence is the whole thing, right? I mean, you can argue it's actually a predictive model at the behind it all, which kind of guesses the next word. So I mean, is it intelligent? But the broader point, what I think you are making is, this technology has a kind of it's a step function change of technology, right? Even in automation, it's a step function change. Yes. So more reorganization of jobs will happen, or the jobs will change faster than before. 100% agree. whether it's intelligent or not, I mean, that's kind of, it's a different argument. You don't even need to define intelligence. But yeah, is this a step function change in terms of the capability? Yes. So will it move things faster? Short answer is yes, which is why kind of the partnerships of like what we are doing and why this thing is important, because otherwise you won't be, you have to be creative around how you actually go and approach certain things here.
And I think there's a point I want to build on with Amaresh there is we've talked a lot about technology is being seen as a skill right now, is that it's almost like I have to understand the technology. The reality is that those of us, I think, that are going to figure out how to use this are going to make it seem frictionless for the user, whether it's the agent or the end user. And I think that is the part of the market that hasn't been cracked yet. This whole concept of building prompt engineers, building people who understand large language models, that is a very finite capacity. And so what we're focused on as IGTX is how do we actually now take that and create scale so that for an agent in that case, or ultimately for an end consumer, they don't need to understand that there's even technology there. They just need to understand that they're interacting to get, in the case of an agent, a series of next best actions so that they can choose. And I think that's a big missing element in the market because the technology companies are playing into a concept of it's all about technology. And every customer I talk to it's all about the business process and how do we embed it in the business process where it just feels like yet another thing happening behind the scenes that is delivering the outcome we want, whether it's first call resolution, whether it's shorter average handle time, whether it's higher NPS.
Always fun to discuss a little philosophical when we discuss technology and automation, and I love that element. But now I want to shift the conversation to the technology itself, right? I want to talk some real examples with you. You guys are working with so many customers, building real world applications in customer experience. Before that, a small story. Okay, I'm not going to name the company, but this is a delivery company. I called them. Me and my cousin we stay together. Okay, and we ordered at the same time. And our delivery ordered from two different because they were not agreeing on a restaurant. Classic cousin cousin behavior on a weekend, right? But the two orders came at the same time, right? And they were delivered. Both pictures were taken, and one of the delivery disappeared when we opened the door, right? Now, this is a very complex problem to explain to a customer agent, right? Especially if AI is talking on the other end, right? So I called the customer delivery person, and obviously the human didn't pick up, and AI picked up. And the AI was capable of something very simple instructions like, ordered, not delivered. There's a fee dispute, something like that. But when it came to like, there were two people who came, one disappeared. There's a chance, we are not accusing anyone. There's a chance that the first delivery person took our second delivery, whatever it was. Like, we don't know what happened, but this was this. What are your practical I want to understand what are some of the most practical applications, because there was this complex problem which needed a human in the end to kind of solve it, right? We are not there yet. Where are some of the immediate care areas that you are thinking from AI in the loop perspective for customer care? What are some of the applications that you've seen? What are you trying to change? What is your vision as IGTX together to help customers, help your customers deliver their customers in terms of their overall experience?
See, I mean, if the first thing, if you go and think about, I mean, you gave a great example, which is kind of L1 jobs could have been automated, but you needed something more advanced or more sophisticated. And at the core of it, right? If you're in the customer experience business, what you're trying to do is learn, right? You're trying to learn the culture. You're trying to learn kind of the policies of the client. You're trying to imbibe kind of what they stand for, and there is a standard operating procedure. It's actually a learning of the entire customer experience is actually a learning organization, right? And if you now think from that perspective and think about the role of AI in learning, which is like going to be like number one. I mean, whether it's in schools to colleges to everywhere, I think that this is what it is. So with IGTX, where we have started the whole journey is how do we make it learning easier and learning more relevant, more timely? That's kind of the core things. And then that will translate into how quickly I go from getting hired to getting on the phone call, on a phone call or a chat kind of in live scenarios. how well do I do during a conversation? Because that's also, because I mean, I'm kind of accessing that. So that's that's the journey. We are thinking about the whole customer experience journey and trying to build capabilities that drive the human potential in each of those things. And I don't know, Katie, you have a bunch of
Yeah.
examples.
Let me give you like just to break down the math. In the average contact center, right? An agent gets, a couple of hours of training a week or coaching a week. Actually, the most important role in hitting your metrics is the team leader role. And a team leader typically has anywhere from 15 to 20 agents they're working with. And think of all the things they're doing. They're not just coaching. And so a couple hours a week, they're sitting with an agent, talking through what quality is found in their transcripts. And by the way, quality in the customer experience environment typically listens, or historically, to a whole call. So they listen to 20 minutes. So imagine how many calls they can do. We audit 10% of calls. Okay. Now take what generative AI and AI can do. First of all, we can monitor 100% of calls, right? We can be looking not just for keyword search, we can be looking for sentiment analysis. We can, to the quality team, serve up the 1 minute of the call that was unsatisfactory. So now we can audit 100% at the same cost base for our customers. Higher quality monitoring. What do we do with that quality? We hand it to the team leads, who then can drive continuous training with the agents, right? Similarly, we can put in place technology where the agent, as they're going through a call, is getting prompts that's measuring them on sentiment, efficiency, timeliness, and accuracy. And at the end of the call, we can serve up to them, hey, agent, when you opened, if you had used the following word, your sentiment analytics would have gone up 10%. Just think of what that means to go from a few hours a week to basically continuous support in an environment which is really hard. If you sit, and I think this is where the challenge in the industry is, most people who talk about customer service have never sat and listened to these calls. Sat and listened to someone call in because they can't get the wheelchair to pick them up at the gate.
Yeah.
And understand the break between the customer's policy, what the agent is facing, and the customer who's irate. Can you imagine if the policy says offer they can get on a different flight? Okay, we all understand why that's the case, but now the agent is facing that. So how do we help them not throw their hands in the air and as a human get upset, get frustrated, walk out, but actually real time grab them and help them understand, or real time throw an alarm up that says, guys, this is broken. How do we go back to the customer and say, here's where we're seeing massive CSAT erosion. Do you want to keep the policy this way, or what can we do differently? That is the next generation of customer experience.
I think that's a really good example of AI in the loop. This example makes my thought process clearer because, I've always talked about this with Amaresh so many times. When it comes to very vague ideas that large corporates talk about, as an individual, it's very, as an audience, right? It makes a lot of sense when you break it down. And I think that's a really good example in terms of how you can, as humans, train your AIs to do better and better, right? One of the things that companies always demand when these kind of applications are given is they want to measure what is the ROI. Obviously, now we are talking mostly applications which are bottom, right? Cost cutting. We are talking about applications where this thing, and I want to touch upon some of the top line and what is the scope around it, because that's a good discussion to have as well. How are you talking with your customers in terms of that overall improvement? What are some of the metrics that you're measuring, right? So, for example, when I picked up that call, I was like, oh my God, another AI agent. Just make me talk to a human. It was better before when I had to dial 2, 3, 1, 4, 5 to reach that person, but right now it's more even difficult. How are you tracking that? How are you ensuring that it is actually delivering value which is satisfying the customers?
Well, in the industry, it's somewhat simple because we're a highly metrics oriented industry, and the penultimate metric today is CSAT, right? So the challenge, customer satisfaction. The challenge with that metric is that the way historically it's been measured is you've been asked when you call, are you willing to fill out a survey at the end of this call? And that's what's used to calculate CSAT in intervals for a provider. Now, With technology where it is today, plugged into the IVR and listening to the calls, we can actually monitor sentiment in CSAT live, which gives the brand a better view, not just the population who were willing because they were either really angry or really happy to fill out the survey, but now we can actually monitor all of the calls, right? And like I said, we can intervene in segments where calls and sentiment or CSAT are starting to go in the wrong direction. But CSAT is the penultimate today. I also talked earlier about how contact centers today historically have been thought of in most companies as a cost center. But if we really believe advocacy and brand loyalty are the drivers of revenue, some forward-leaning customers are really starting to think about how can the contact center also drive attach, cross-sell, upsell. And if you're having a delightful experience, to be honest, I call in because I'm trying to fix my soda water machine, right? And it's broken, and you delight me in terms of how it is. And by the way, I mentioned at the end of the day, gosh, going into the fall, have you tried the new fall flavors? And I'm happy that my machine is going to be fixed. I am more likely to say, no, I haven't heard about the new fall flavors. What are they? And if I'm equipped in the contact center to say, oh, there's new pumpkin spice fizzy water, I mean, we're all obsessed with it going into Halloween, then that can be an upsell or a bundling opportunity. Many companies who are leading in growth of long tail sales are figuring this out. And I think that is Gen 2 of where service, delight, brand advocacy to sales can come in. And I used a very simple example, but you can think of it across the whole spectrum. So I think CSAT is the measure today. Forward looking is really where brand advocacy translates to growth. And I think most companies' desire is growth in this environment. So let's use every lever we can to get there.
But do you really think AI will change that? Because, and I'm just talking purely from my experiences on talking with AI whenever I'm calling someone, right? Uh, AI is not able to be empathetic.
No, and this
right?
is why I'm saying it's AI in the loop, not
Okay.
human in the loop. So I'm the human who can come up with that. Now, it may be that a company has automation or AI running in the background that says, hey, next best action is do you want to offer them that there's this new flavor out there? It's me that can determine, does this customer really want to hear about this right now? If we've just gone through a very tangled conversation where you are frustrated as heck because you've done 10 calls, your machine's not working, you sent it out twice, your wife is ready to leave, all these things, I'm not going to offer you pumpkin spice fizzy water, right? But if we've had a delightful call where I've explained to you how we'll ship a replacement unit tomorrow, would you like me to send some of this pumpkin spice with it? Totally different context. And that's where I think it's the human taking those judgment calls, often aided through technology to know what's available to them to offer.
Because right now humans are doing what machines should be doing and taking 80% of that work, let's say, is done the stuff that could be done by machines. Now think about what that 80% capacity allows you to do. That's what Katie is talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of conversation that humans could have, and think about the metrics that will move rather than I'm just trying to play catch up.
Sorry, Katie, you wanted to say something?
No, and I think it's also just like, if you've spent time with these chatbots and conversational today agents, so much of life, don't we find, is in the delivery of how you say something.
Yes.
And you watch it, really great salespeople, really delightful people have a way of understanding what tone to use with you, what words to use with you. That is EQ at its best. And I think that's where we're mingling or commingling and getting challenged. When we think of all these autonomous agents, it loses that. Most of them really can't deliver on that promise yet. And so I think that's where, again, humans and humans reading humans is where we come back to the importance of the human empathy or human side of the conversation, to know whether to offer it or not, how to say it, how to bring that. I mean, that's the human side of our context.
I think I understand your argument, right? Both of you are trying to say essentially there are elements of a job in a cost center which can be automated through AI. There are elements which are not, right? But at the same time, there are 2 points, which one was made by Amaresh and one by Katie. Amaresh mentioned that when you are trying to build AI for a customer, it is important to understand the culture of the organization and some of the values that they bring with. That is how you will build AI. for that company, right? To kind of help address their cost centers. And one of the things that you, Katie, that you mentioned was about the cost the customer is willing to pay, right? Now, balancing these 2 points, not just balancing, addressing both these 2 points together. Do you believe that we should still build cost centers which are answered through AI, or should we still keep the talking of the part to humans and keep some of the other parts which are more which have to do more with transactions and other things that can be automated to AI, or or there is no right or wrong answer to it. We have to balance it
That's
somewhere in
the AI
between.
in the loop. That, I
Yeah,
mean,
no,
that's the point. You don't call for only transaction or this and that. You call for the whole thing, and that's the whole point.
and I think this is
Yeah,
why IGTX, right? Like most customer experience firms, customer service firms don't have a deep technology side of their organization. Where we're really fortunate as IGT and partnering with AuxoAI and other firms is that we actually have both sides, the right brain and the left brain of an organization together. And so what that allows us to do, Keshav, is it allows us to actually step back and with a customer understand what is the culture, what is the outcome, what is the process, which pieces can be automated, which pieces can be augmented, and which pieces have expertise that we can use technology to further accelerate that expertise. And that is embedding all of that deeply into the end-to-end process and bringing it to the technology stack, I think is very unique in this industry. And that's why I'm so bullish that in partnership with Amaresh and with our deep domain expertise in customer experience and our technology team and their AI expertise, we're actually bringing something very different in terms of how to think about it, because it's not binary. It requires you understand that context and you build it into a sustainable process so it's at production. I don't want to see any more POCs. No one wants to see any more POCs. What we want to see is things that can run at production, can be used by the teams using them, so that when an exception does come up, the agent in the process is able to catch it and resolve it. Otherwise, you get all these technology firms, all these, startups, all these process firms, and it's like they're not talking to each other. And everyone's trying to optimize, as you said, should we automate it all or should we have humans? It's a combination. It's heterogeneous.
And Kashyap, I mean, make it very real for a lot of your audience, like who all have use cases on contact centers or customer care, and they are like normally in the technology side of the house, right? It's like almost like kind of pushing something towards that rather than co-creating and building it together with the nuances that I think kind of Katie was talking about, right? How do you actually make that happen? And so on if you just start from the technology side and just kind of serve it up, it won't work. It's a much more complex with a nuance and business context and the process.
got it. See, I'm for me, right? As a journalist who has never built that level of advanced technology, it's very difficult for me to understand what that translates to, and I think it's almost impossible to kind of categorize it blankly. You need to kind of speak to that customer. You need to understand their values. You want to leave the empathy and the values and the culture to the human side. You want to leave the tasks and this thing to this. You want to bring them, marry them together, and in a way that gives them optimum efficiency. And I see where you're building. Now, here's my question to you, and this is a very important question, right? Uh, I know the number of times you have been approached by companies to say, "Give me Gen AI," right? Give me AI, give me Gen AI, right? It was give me data science before, give me AI, give me Gen AI. What are some of the critical questions that you are asking them to understand this this entire this culture, this industry, their processes? These What are some of these important questions that you are asking them to ensure that you deliver the right balance of product, where AI is intervening in the agency of human at the right amount and the right proportion? That's my last question to both of you.
I mean, I can start. I mean, listen. I mean, the businesses are the same businesses, right? They have their profits to make. They have to keep employees happy. They have to make customers happy, right? I mean, the businesses haven't kind of changed. I mean, there are basically, so you basically fundamentally go back and understand what is that as a company? What is the corporate strategy? What is the company trying to do? What are they trying to kind of what things they're trying to move, right? Sometimes they might be trying to do net new things. That's also fine, but otherwise they're normally trying to move a metric. Then you start working backwards from like what processes and what job roles does matter? Like who's going to do it, where they're going to change it, and who's going to do it. And then how do you do it today? Then you start figuring out, I mean, whether you need AI. That's the first question. Many times, listen, I mean, everything is being packaged as AI because I think we talked about that, which is the talent wants to work on AI. So everything has to become AI, otherwise it's not like exciting enough. But in true sense, I mean, what really tool and technology do you need to kind of solve that? And then more often than not, you will find that there are 3-4 intervention points in that whole cycle where some of these new technologies could be really impactful, right? That's how you start building out kind of the case. I mean, there's a whole thing, Kitty and I, we kind of talk about it, which is follow the kind of the decision flow. If you follow the decision flow, you will get to the right kind of set of things. And that's how we start the conversation. Having said that, there's a huge push towards where's the AI, give me the AI, make it all AI. But yeah, you have to kind of.
Is there a fixed set of questions for this when talking to his customer?
It's what I just kind of just laid it out. What are the metrics? Which are the metrics? Which process and function? Which role? Right? How do you do it today? And then where do you think you can intervene? Those are the 5 set of questions.
And I think like as you go through that, like once you have, as Amaresh said, the end-to-end process, I'll give you an example because you love examples. One of the end-to-end processes that we serve is baggage. Okay, so most people in your audience probably have had the experience of standing at midnight at a baggage carousel, and guess what? Their bag doesn't arrive. Insult to injury is they're standing there at midnight and they watch everyone else get their bag and leave, and their bag doesn't arrive, right? Actually, we'd be happier just to know the bag wasn't coming and leave the airport and deal with it later, right? To be honest, that's where the problem statement starts, which is that is the worst experience. Maybe worse yet, you go over to the baggage counter where it's, midnight and everyone's checked out and you're trying to work with them to find your bag and they have no information either. Okay. So we've worked with a technology partner in the airline space who has a technology that when you check in, your bag gets a scanner on it. I'm sure you've seen that. They put the ticket. So they know at any moment where your bag is. So the first thing in our end-to-end technology question was, can we eliminate any of this friction? And the first question was, can we let you know your bag's not coming before you stand at the carousel? And yes, we can. We know where you are and we know where your bag is. We just, from a technology perspective, have never eliminated it by telling you. So can you get an alert when you're on the plane that says, hey, Keshav, you're landing in 20 minutes. Your bag is actually in Charlotte. Okay. Now there's a decision tree, as Amaresh said, which says, now we know that your bag isn't coming. So at least you don't have to stand at the carousel. Now, the second thing is, do you know who to contact, right? We can use technology to proactively email you your options. Right? Again, we can eliminate the need to talk to a human yet, because still, this is just now informing you. This is FAQ basically proactively. That's in our solution. Then it gets to the point where now you're actually pissed. You figured out your bag will arrive in the next day or so. All the information is in your hands, but you're going to a wedding, right? And you got no clothes. Or you're going to a business meeting and you got nothing. This is where delight comes from calling and speaking to someone who has all that information to you and understands that you're a XYZ platinum, customer. And it's super important that we satisfy you so that someone can actually handhold you and explain what's going to happen, what you can go buy, how we're going to credit you, right? Stepping back to what can we not do? What can we do faster and better to inform you? And where would you like to talk to someone because you're angry and you want to understand all your options? And oftentimes the questions people have nothing to do with the simple policy. It's like 7 things together. No knowledge graph chatbot today can connect all those things and answer you in the moment. And the questions that come out are like, hey, okay, so you said I get $100 of credit. I'm not happy with that. Okay. The human can decide, do we up the policy? Right. Do I get something applied to my frequent flyer model? A chatbot doesn't even know your frequent flyer number, but the agent can understand. So this is where going through what can I eliminate to where do I need that human touch is the questions we go through, and we put an end-to-end solution, which is technology plus person. It'll be live in the market soon. Yeah.
This has been a great conversation. I want to hear some closing thoughts, right? What is your message? What is your vision for IGTX? How do you want to what kind of customers do you want to work with? What are some of the dialogues you want to initiate? What do you want to learn from them and help them out? From both of you, Katie, if you want to go first, and then Amrish.
Yeah, the concept of IGTX was I believe, and I think Amrish does also deeply that, as we said, this is not a technology, a process, a policy, or a people question alone. This is partners like IGTX who understand these domains very, very deeply, and they're quite complex, can bring that stack together and again, figure out what to eliminate over time, figure out where to bring in new technologies, and figure out how to train and drive expertise and job skill creation in people. And that's really what we're bringing to market. We're starting with the travel, transportation, and hospitality industry as our core focal point. It doesn't mean we're not working with others. We are. But because we so deeply understand that industry, because 25 years, we've been running core operations for almost every major travel brand. And we will move from there into other industries that we equally work with. And the idea, again, is that we believe that technology first can only be delivered in the context of domain. Like I said, unless you understand the core operations of how that baggage problem works, it's very hard to understand how to stitch it all together to create the most end-to-end frictionless experience for the end customer. And that's the customer who has advocacy and loyalty, which is the ultimate metric. Amresh?
Yeah, no, it's I think just to reiterate, I mean, Kashyap, this whole notion around industry-specific vertical stacks in AI, that is where I think everything is going, because AI cannot work in isolation of the process and the technology. Every technology, the travel industry, for instance, has a very unique tech stack, right? Their own set of technologies, vendors, and everything. So how do you integrate right into the process, right into the technology, and in the appropriate manner? That's where you will drive value. I mean, you can't just push a tool and say start using it, and there's nothing is going to happen. And this whole notion of this vertical AI place is essentially what IGTX is, which is kind of what we envision.
On that note, Katie, Amresh, thank you so much for your time. It was a fun conversation. I loved the examples. Examples is what makes it the most fun, because you are relating to a lot of the things that you're saying.
I now know you're a Game of Thrones fan.
Yes. Game of Thrones is. I think I have to know which actor it was. So I'm going to I'm going to call you again for that.
Perfect.
Thank
you
you
so much.
Thank you. Take care.